Okay, we now welcome on our good friend, Warren Sharp, at Sharp Football. You can find him on Twitter. He has sharpfootballanalysis.com, sharpfootballstats.com. He's got a podcast on The Ringer. He's on NBC Sports. He's all over the place. We're going to talk a little football. We're going to kind of, we do this every month, catch up with what's going on. So let's start with, and we're taping this on Thursday night. We're going to run it on Friday. So it's before the game tonight, the Seahawks-Cardinals game. But let's start there. Obviously, this can all sound outdated, but we've been talking about it. Russell Wilson has not looked great the last few weeks. The Seahawks defense is abysmal. What is the fix for the Seahawks, and is there a fix?
So I don't know the fix on defense. I do know that the last time that they played the Arizona Cardinals, they did not have Jamal Adams. So Jamal Adams being there might help a little bit. You obviously have to try to do your best to contain Kyler Murray and prevent him from running the football and doing damage on the ground. So Jamal, they could try to use Jamal as like a little bit of a spy because they have been playing him down in the box a little bit more. But it's tough on that side of the ball. I really don't know if there is a legitimate fix because their personnel are bad. So I don't know really what you can do to fix your personnel issues. What you can do offensively, though, is help your defense a little bit by making that opposing offense more predictable. And that's, you've got to get these leads and maintain them. And they've obviously struggled to do that since they came off the bye. I remember them heading into the bye and they were undefeated. And I was like, wow, they've got an early bye. It's only week 6. I wonder how they're going to deal with that because they were rolling up until that point. And, they said, well, we like it. We like because we think we're going to get guys back healthy. But they've dropped 3 out of the last 4 games since they came off that bye. The only win was over the 49ers, who were terrible, very injured. And Jimmy G left that game. He was playing hurt to start with, as it turned out. And he ends up leaving that game. I think part of their defense is going to look a little bit better when you get past this Arizona game. Because once you're done with this Arizona game, you're going to play 4 teams, three of which are from the NFC East, that should make your defense look a lot better. The Eagles, the Giants, and the Washington football team. You also have the Jets sprinkled in, so a little Adam Gase action. So I think the defense is going to look a little bit better from that perspective. Offensively, they look good their last game out against the Arizona Cardinals. In the first half especially, they had a 10-point lead at halftime, only had 3 third-down attempts and like 18 first downs, which is really good. We want to stay out of third down. But the problem for that game later on, and then for the last couple opponents, is that one of the things that teams are doing against Seattle is not crowding the box on early downs. They're daring the Seahawks to run the football. So they're playing coverage and they're like, we know you guys have changed up this year. You want to pass the ball a lot more on early downs? Fine. We're going to flood the coverage. We're going to dare you to run the football. And it's going to be up to Pete Carroll and to Russell Wilson as to how much they do want to say, fine, we loved passing, but we got opportunities to run the ball here. So that'll be interesting to see tonight against the Cardinals as well as over the next couple of games.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to their running game, they've been minus Chris Carson for a while. He's a really good running back. I've had like a weird little obsession with Chris Carson ever since he was drafted. I always thought since that first preseason game, like this guy is a top 10 running back in the NFL when he's healthy. He's not healthy that often, but is the reason that the Seahawks aren't running the football because they don't have Chris Carson as backups are like that significant of a drop-off? Or has Pete Carroll just taken the whole like let Russ cook thing and just over-adapted, and that pendulum's going to take a while to swing back?
Well, I don't know how long. I hope it takes a while to swing back. I hope it's not something that happens suddenly because this is what they needed to do for a while now. I mean, last year in the postseason, Chris Carson was also injured, and they were still running the ball in the playoff game with Travis Homer and Marshawn Lynch. I mean, I don't know what they were even thinking at that point in time, and it's crazy to imagine that team still was run heavy on the road in Green Bay in the postseason, and now they completely flipped the switch. But I've been begging for them to do this exact thing for a couple of years now. Is you got one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Let him throw the ball on early downs. You need to try to build leads. Stop trying to come back in the fourth quarter. So without Carson, yes, runs are less efficient. It's still, though, it doesn't necessarily matter the exact running back. And we see that with the Carolina Panthers without Christian McCaffrey and how well Mike Davis has been doing. more of an impetus is on when you call the run. And if you call a run in a smart situation to run the ball, which is when the box is light or down in the red zone or in short yardage situations, that is when you're going to have the most production. It doesn't necessarily matter who the back is. Some guys are obviously more talented than others, better at breaking tackles than others. So you might get a little bit more production there. But I think that as long as they're calling runs when it's efficient to run the football and not running into stacked boxes on first down, they still should be somewhat successful. But you're right, getting Chris Carson back will make a difference for them.
I want to talk about the Steelers real quick, because I feel like when we talk about the Steelers, we always give a lot of credit to their defense, and their defense is good, and they've been good for a while. But they're sneaky, kind of a fun offensive football team. And you don't always think about that when you talk about Pittsburgh Steelers offense. You know, back in the day, it was just like, give the ball to the running back, get 4 yards, repeat until you win by, 20-17. But they're putting up points. Has Mike Tomlin done anything significantly different in his play calling this year as opposed to years past? Obviously throwing away, the games that Ben Roethlisberger wasn't the quarterback last year.
Yeah, well, they brought in a guy named Matt Canada, and you guys know him from college because I know you guys are college football hounds. And so Matt Canada is really good with pre-snap motion. Now, they're still hardly using any play action. I still don't quite understand how they can't improve that usage because they're one of the worst teams in the NFL at actually using it. And then when they use it, it's basically like a throwaway type situation. They could design some things to make that part of the game plan a little bit more efficient. But what they are doing more of is a lot more pre-snap motion, and they've got more wide receivers out on the football field, because they've got some good wide receivers. They're actually healthy right now. So that's when you would want to use them. And so Ben's becoming more of like a facilitator and a distributor of the football. Is working out really well for that offense. Granted, they haven't played too stiff of competition, but let's just take, we talked about the play calling of the Seattle Seahawks, and I focus a lot on play calling because players definitely help win and lose games, but game plans themselves can help win or lose games before the games even start. And one of the things that I loved about the Steelers from what I saw last week is, you guys remember Ben Roethlisberger had those double knee, whatever happened to him in the Dallas Cowboys game, where I love the picture that Big Cat always tweets out, where Ben's wrapped up with the ace bandages and ice packs all over himself anytime he starts talking about his injuries. But he left the game for a little while, comes back, wins the game in Dallas, but he's dealing with these double knee injuries. Then he's on the COVID list due to close contact. So he's not even at the facility. He's not even practicing the entire week. Now, some coaches may take those two things and say, well, maybe we should design a little bit more of a run-heavy game plan. And then other coaches may also look at the weather forecast and say, man, it looks like it's actually going to be pretty windy. There's some gusts here in the forecast against the Bengals last Sunday in Pittsburgh. Maybe we should factor that in along with our quarterback not even being in the facility and design a more run-heavy game plan. But you know what the Steelers offense did? They went 75% of their plays were passes through the first 3 quarters of that game. They were up 22-7 at halftime. And even in the third quarter of that game against the Bengals, they still passed the ball on 76% of their offensive plays. This shows me that they know, a run game's not great, and we're not going to force the issue. Their pass defense sucks. We're going to pass the ball because we've got a good quarterback that we trust. And Ben was playing well, and they continue to pass. So I think that's a perfect example of designing a smart, intelligent game plan before the game even happens, not getting scared, not doing the conservative thing, but attacking the opponent's weakness, which is the Bengals pass defense and their pass rush, which is terrible, which I think is going to help Alex Smith a lot this week. I'm actually excited to watch your Washington football team this week, PFT, but I think the Steelers are a legitimate team. And right now, they are in a dogfight with the Kansas City Chiefs for that single possession of that first round bye. There's only one this season, and only one of these two teams is going to get it. There's only one loss between them thus far. Great rematch game Sunday night in Las Vegas for the Chiefs, and obviously the Steelers need to avoid a look ahead against the Jacksonville Jaguars team, because next Thursday they host on Thanksgiving the Baltimore Ravens. And that game is going to be massive, obviously, for their ability to win the division as well as futures in general and them getting the first round bye. They can't afford to look past lowly Jaguars to take it on the Baltimore Ravens on Thanksgiving.
Matt Canada was the guy who put up 70 against Nebraska in the Big Ten championship game when he was offensive coordinator for Wisconsin for a single year. He basically took the play calling away from Brett Bielema, and they put up 70 on Nebraska. All right, so you mentioned the Ravens. I assume you heard the interview where Lamar Jackson essentially said, like, defenses are calling out our plays beforehand. Do you see that with Greg Roman? Because something similar happened in San Francisco when they were explosive, new, innovative with Colin Kaepernick. Then it kind of regressed a little. Is that happening right now, or is it more that they just don't have the talent, wide receivers, missing pieces on offensive line, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, it's a combination. I think they need to change their philosophy a little bit. I wanted to see the start of the season a little bit more ability for Lamar to come to the line of scrimmage and audible based upon how many men were in the box. And if he's not getting favorable looks, get out of those plays. But so often Lamar comes to the line and just, they just call the play that whatever's been called, regardless of how the defense appears to be matching up with them. So that would help. But I do sense a little bit of the predictability. But sometimes it's like the defensive players are just guessing right. And it's not necessarily giving them that big of an advantage, but it's enough to make the quarterback frustrated, which I think that Lamar is. The other thing that defenses are doing differently this year is they're playing a lot more man coverage. And so they're trying to give extra defenders the ability to get into the box as necessary and making Lamar beat them in man coverage. And Lamar is great in zone when he can use some of those play actions and find guys in the gaps in the zone and hit them. But in man coverage, it's a lot more difficult when guys aren't reacting to the play action. And it's also a lot more of a challenge for him because you're down some of the key blockers that you have in the run game. So your runs are no longer being quite as productive. They actually need to be passing the ball more on first down. They have one of the highest run rates on first down. Lamar, this may surprise you because it surprised me. If you look at the numbers themselves, Lamar has better efficiency when he passes the ball on first downs this year than he did last year, but the team is running the ball more this year and the runs are far less efficient than they were last year. They're down a run blocking tight end, Boyle, who just got hurt recently. They were down multiple offensive linemen because some got hurt, some weren't here for this season. Yanda wasn't here. So they've got new pieces there that weren't there to start the season as well as last year. It's something that they're going to have to overcome. But I think this offense is still a work in progress, trying to make up for some of those losses in personnel and adjust to the adjustments that the defenses have made to try to slow them down.
Makes sense.
What about down in New Orleans this week? It's going to be interesting because Drew Brees is out with a shoulder injury. Right? Correct?
Shoulder and
a really bad shoulder injury.
And maybe Sean Payton punctured his lung.
Maybe a bruised rib. But it's interesting because they've got obviously Jameis and Taysom, and last year we saw something similar where Teddy came in and he was the guy. It was like a mixture of Teddy and then Taysom, and it was a little conservative at times with Teddy. But are they going to see this matchup with the Falcons and be like, we're going to let Jameis cook or whatever let Jameis eat? Are they going to let Jameis eat against this Falcons defense, or is it going to be pretty conservative?
Well, I will tell you, interestingly, today, Alvin Kamara was not at practice, and I heard that he was limited on Wednesday with an ankle. So it's going to be interesting if he can go, because he's the type of guy, even though he's a running back, completely changes the game plan, right? Like you can try to work around not having Michael Thomas as a receiver, but Alvin Kamara does so much in both the run and the pass that it will be very difficult. So I'm still optimistic that he's going to play. I've heard nothing to say otherwise, but anytime a guy practices one day and then the next day he does not practice, not necessarily a great sign for his availability. But we'll pretend for the purposes of this discussion that Kamara is up there, because we haven't heard that he's not. It is going to be much different having a quarterback like Jameis than Teddy, because I feel like Teddy really falls in line with what the coach wants to see happen, where he wants the read to be, where he wants that ball thrown, and pretty much like managing the offense the right way. Whereas I feel like Jameis wants to prove himself a little bit more.
Right. I know it's just, yes, Jameis is a wild stallion.
Yes.
That's a very diplomatic way of putting it.
Be himself.
Teddy listens to his coaches and will make good throws.
And sees linebackers.
And Jameis is Jameis.
Jameis is Jameis.
I'm excited to see Jameis in a full game with the LASIK, though, because maybe we see a totally new eyelid gets turned over here, and we get to see a much better Jameis. But there's no doubt they're going to have to dial things back a little bit more, because you're right. You can't, if you don't have Drew there, you can't turn the ball over. And this Falcons defense, that secondary was very young to start the season. Then they had a bunch of injuries. Some guys missed some time with COVID issues as well. They're getting healthy, and they're really playing hard under their interim head coach. And I think they're doing a really good job. Much different defense right now than they were at the middle point of the season. And it's not going to be a step over for the Saints without Drew Brees to really take it to them. So.
Yeah, Raheem Morris, I mean, they are playing a lot better defense. Give us, and you're going to make some people mad, but that's okay. Give us your fraud alert teams. Give us a couple teams that their record is probably looking okay, but there's some suspect things going on. And it can be simply that they just don't have enough to get to the Super Bowl. So it's not saying they're not going to get to the playoffs, or they're going to, not whatever. They can get to the playoffs, but you see some things that are going to rear their ugly heads when the rubber meets the road and they get to January football.
Well, it's more difficult right now because it was a lot easier a month ago. I did call out the Tennessee Titans at that point in time. I got some flack after that as soon as they won a game, and they really haven't looked all that great since that point in time, right? So I'm not going to come back and say I was right, but I do think the Titans are a team that needs to change their philosophy a little bit when it comes to run pass. When they go up against a good run defense, throw the ball a little bit more on early downs. And you may see that it opens things up for Derrick Henry later in the game. He always seems to turn it on later in the game anyways, but don't get yourself in a hole like they were doing at some points to the Colts. Remember that game last Thursday against the Colts? They came out and they threw the ball on the first drive to work the ball down the field. They had 3 first down passes to work the ball down the field. Only 1 Derrick Henry run the entire drive, put up 7 points. After that, they went 60% run the rest of the way, and their runs were not very effective at all. They got themselves in a hole. The same type of thing happened against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is a team, when you're talking about can they go the distance in the AFC in the postseason, when you might be facing some teams like that, like the Colts or like the Steelers, you've got to come out throwing the ball a little bit more. So I still am going to keep them up there. The Raiders are an interesting team. I can't wait to see what happens this week. I mean, everybody's so upset with this bus situation. And I think this bus situation is one of the best things that's happened this season, because we get like a little rivalry, and then we got Gruden blaming the bus driver. I mean, I'm sure you guys have discussed this a fair amount or will, but this has been a crazy situation in Denver. In Vegas this weekend. But I think that this team, I don't know. I like Carr. They had some edges with Carr in the game against the Chiefs the last go around because of the way that the Chiefs defense was playing. They were daring Carr to throw over the top, and he was beating them, and he was doing that. I still don't think that this team is a team that's going to go far in the postseason, even though they're 6-3. A team in the NFC that I would probably say the same thing too. We obviously should at some point.
Packers.
Did you just whisper the Bears or the Packers?
No, the Bears aren't frauds. They suck. There's a big difference.
The entire premise of asking you this question was to get you to say that the Packers are soft and that the Giants can beat them in the playoffs.
Packers.
I think this game. So I do want to talk about the Bears with your big cat in a second.
No, they suck. They suck, Warren.
I just want to talk to you about the play calling with Matt Nagy and Laser. But with regard to the Packers, this is going to be a fascinating game this weekend. Will or won't Devontae Adams be able to play? I think that their defense, I know they get a couple corners back, but I think their defense is somewhat soft and finesse a little bit. I think that you can have some success on this defense. Offensively, though, if Aaron Rodgers gets protection against the Colts are set up to stop the run. And they're set up to, like, with their great linebackers, of stopping maybe your tight ends or your running back passes. But if you have Adams up, and if you have Lazard back and playing, I don't know, at least 45% of their snaps, he's going to be on a count. He's not 100% healthy. But they're going to be able to attack this Colts defense in a way that most offenses that have played the Colts haven't. So I don't think the Colts have this top 5 defense that no offense is going to have success against. We saw what Baker Mayfield was able to do against these guys. I think the Packers should be able to have a little bit of success through the air here. But in general, I do think that the Packers, while still a very good team, are a team that probably will have a little bit of difficulty when it gets late in the season.
like that.
Okay, with the
Yes.
Bears, it's interesting because you said Matt Laser. I don't know if that was a
Bill
Freudian,
Lazor.
I don't know if that was a Freudian slip because when I was watching the game, I was like, they gave up play calling and it looks exactly like Matt Nagy's play calling. So are they the same person, or was there actually a difference between Nagy and Laser's play calling on primetime?
I was actually more frustrated with what I saw on primetime than I was with Matt Nagy, and I was frustrated as shit with what I saw from Matt Nagy. Like, this is a team that goes out and drafts tight ends. They bring in tight ends. They have a shitload of tight ends on this squad. And if you look at the data, it clearly shows that they're significantly better passing the ball from 12 personnel. What does 12 personnel do? It gives the appearance of a potential run.
One
It
running
also
back,
adds
two
an
tight
extra
ends.
tight end to have in there. One running back, two tight ends. You're exactly right. And those tight ends can help in pass pro at times. And your offensive line,
not Jimmy
obviously,
Graham.
Good point.
not Jimmy Graham. You don't want him
Are
in
we
there.
considering
But
when you do the 12 personnel, are we
Yeah.
counting Jimmy Graham, or is that 11.5 personnel?
it sort of is 11 and a half because he does not line up in line to run block very often or to even pass pro. But the point remains that these guys are great when they throw out of 12 and they're terrible when they throw out of 11. And so what did they do in the game on Monday night? 33 dropbacks. Only 3 times did they have less than 3 wide receivers out on the field. My mind was completely blown by how heavy they went to 3 wide receivers when your 3 wide receivers aren't even great beyond Allen Robinson, and you're much better passing the ball from 12. The other thing that I want these guys to do, Big Cat, and just pay attention to it the rest of the way, because I know you and I were talking back and forth during the game. The whole concept of play action and throwing the ball behind to the line of scrimmage is unsuccessful. It does not work. Play action gets the linebackers to hesitate in their drop, to come up and stop the run, to keep their eyes in the backfield. When you then throw the ball in front of those linebackers, close to the line of scrimmage, short of the line of scrimmage or close to it, those linebackers are already headed in that direction. The efficiency is much worse. The goal of play action needs to be toss the ball above the linebackers' heads, and that's what they weren't doing. Every single pass was play action, throw it short, and the defense rallies up and smothers them. I didn't understand what the Bears are doing, but I will just tell you this. Don't absolve Matt Nagy just because Bill Lazor didn't do a good job calling plays. The play calling was a problem before. It's still a problem. Just because 2 guys don't call plays well does not make the first guy right. And yes, the team needs a lot of help. And yes, the GM is to blame for most of this. But I still feel like this team is wasting a defense completely, and I wanted to see what their offense would be able to do with good play calling. I thought that was going to be Monday night against the Vikings. Unfortunately, it was not.
No, they stink. They stink. All right, I had one last question. Give us now the vice versa. So a team that is maybe not great record-wise, but you could see them having a good November, December stretch and getting into the playoffs, and everyone would be like, whoa, that was kind of crazy where that came from.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are really only a couple of teams that stand out. So they're pretty obvious to anybody. It's going to be the Minnesota Vikings could continue this run. Now, I was on their under before the season started. I was not surprised at all that they started that way. They do have a somewhat easy stretch for several weeks, and so that's a team that could obviously continue doing what they do. This Dallas Cowboys game, though, a lot of interesting components in this game because you've got a lot of familiarity here. Remember, Mike Zimmer used to coach Andy Dalton, who's the Cowboys quarterback. Remember that Mike McCarthy, who's now Dallas's head coach, for years went up against Mike Zimmer's defense in Minnesota. So you've got like a lot of familiarity between multiple people involved here that have key roles in deciding the outcome of this game. But if Dallas can stop the run, their defense has to do a lot better. They're 5th worst stopping the run on the season. If they can stop the run here, I really think that they're going to be able to exploit some things in this Vikings defense that other teams that have played Minnesota recently have been unable to do. But I'll still throw the Vikings on this list. And then I could easily go and say the New England Patriots could get back on track. But I'm still going to stick with the Philadelphia Eagles, even though they are a disaster and lost that game to the New York Giants. My belief still with the Eagles is that if you simplify life for Carson Wentz, reduce the amount of deeper drops where he's running all around in the pocket and trying to do all these complicated things, just drop back and throw the ball. Let the receivers do some work after they catch it. Get it into their hands, get it out of your hands. They've got Miles Sanders back. He was a big upgrade. You could see it right away, the punch that he provides running the football that they didn't have without him. Multiple other guys along the offensive line are back. You're going to have your tight ends back. Zach Ertz will be back soon. We already have Dallas Goedert back in the fold. Jalen Reagor's back. So I just think they're getting healthy at the right time. So they're a team that obviously has a losing record. I think they're still a game up on in the NFC due to their record right now, because they're 3-5-1.
Yeah,
and the tie. So this could be definitely a team that we're going to see hosting a playoff game. And all I can tell you is this: the other teams in the NFC playoffs are not going to want to go on the road. The wildcard teams are not going to want to go on the road to Philly in the postseason when they're playing healthy, when they're healthy and playing hopefully better than they are now, and have to deal with facing the Eagles there in the postseason.
It's interesting.
They're going to play the Giants. So
yeah, we think the Giants are.
Oh, you got the Giants.
They're decent-ish.
Danny Dimes.
Yeah,
they're good-ish.
But I like kind of the stat that you alluded to, like the less time that Carson Wentz has the ball in his hands over the course of a football game, the more likely the Eagles are to win. Like there are some quarterbacks that you think of, like Ben Roethlisberger is probably the exact opposite. The longer he holds on to it and buys time back there, probably the more points they end up scoring. But with Wentz, I like that idea. It's like if you can just get the ball out of his hands and into somebody else's hands, it's safer, and their offense is probably going to be better off for it.
And the same thing is true for Washington, not to interrupt you, but just to share this week, because that's your team. Alex Smith, I've studied his dropbacks over the last couple of weeks as a starter, and he's taken a lot of 3- and 5-step drops from shotgun, and those are very inefficient for him. The defense has a lot of time to pressure. The pressure rate's like 45% when he's dropping back, and we know, he's coming back from a horrendous injury. I'm shocked he's even playing like he is and be able to run around like he is. I think it's almost a miracle. But you're inviting pressure when you do that, and you have a lot of receivers on that team that are really good after the catch. So the goal for them should just be to get the ball out of his hands quickly. It doesn't have to be deep balls down the field. Dial a few of those up, yes, but a lot of shorter passes. Now, the Bengals have been very good defending running backs out of the backfield, so you're probably not going to see quite as many. Like McKissick has just been eating targets left and right. The guy's a maniac because of how much Alex Smith dumps the ball to him. But I wonder if they're going to get a little bit more to the wide receivers and 11 personnel on these quicker dropbacks, get it out of Alex Smith's hands, because one of the things he has not lost, his brain, his decision-making, his ability to manage that offense. So utilize that and get the ball out of his hands quickly to minimize the impact of his legs on the game.
I like it. Yeah, use Terry McLaurin. Underrated guy.
Yes, very.
Yes. All right. Anything else we should look for this weekend? Maybe you don't want to give us a pick, but give us a pick.
Well, actually, I'm giving away everything. This is the 1 week of the season that I do a free week. So if you just go to sharpfootballanalysis.com, click the banner at the top, every single thing on the site is free. So all the fantasy, we got write-ups on all of the games already. And then all of my betting recommendations are going to be posted there as well. So there's a few games I really liked. One of the games that I really liked, I actually liked the over in this Washington game. It was at 45. It's now up to 47. But the rest of the games are up there on the site. But I think Washington should have some success throwing the ball and moving the ball on the Bengals. And we know Joey covers. Like Joe Burrow is just going to be chucking the ball a ton. As long as he can deal with that pass rush, as long as he can get the ball out of his hands quickly, I can't see them scoring too few points to not send this game over that total.
Love it.
Is there one player out there, and this is just strictly to make us sound smart, like one guy that we should look at who has been underused this year that you think if their team focuses in and is able to get the ball in that person's hand for the rest of the year, you're going to see an improvement in the offense?
Wow, that's a good question. So I would have to go with a couple of a team or two that I thought was going to do better. Well, I don't know.
I sprung this one on you.
You sprung this one on me. I would say the Minnesota Vikings need to throw a little bit more to their tight ends. We saw what Irv Smith was able to do in his last game out. He missed last week, but he caught a couple of tight ends. Tight ends are a great weapon for Kirk Cousins. But I will just say this again, and we'll stick with that team. You can't throw the ball too little to Justin Jefferson, too much to Justin Jefferson. This dude is a complete freak, and it just sickens me. And I'm glad my brain finally got here, PFT, because it sickens me to see this offense run the ball first down after first down with Dalvin Cook picking up 3 yards. The defense knows they're going to run the football here. Meanwhile, you got this young buck, Justin Jefferson, who is just destroying dudes on the perimeter of the field, taking short passes, turn them into big gains, catching deep balls, running great routes. This guy needs to be featured more prominently in this offense. You don't necessarily need to take away targets from Thielen. Just throw the ball more to him and stop running the ball on first downs with Dalvin Cook. That's my advice for the Minnesota Vikings.
I love
it. All right. So, Warren, thank you. As always, sharpfootballanalysis.com if you want
Free
betting
week.
recommendations. Free week over in the Washington football team versus the Bengals, and go check out the rest of them. Warren, thank you. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.